The snowstorm outside the airplane window looked like 1,000 tiny ghosts drifting through the night sky, and for a moment, it felt as if the entire world had paused, suspended between darkness and light, loneliness and hope. Somewhere between those clouds and the cold silence of Christmas Eve, a man who had everything sat quietly with a heart that felt painfully empty, until a small voice from the seat beside him whispered the sentence that would change his life forever. Mom said lonely people need friends. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of a single moment to change a life, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The plane hummed with low vibrations, its lights dimmed, and most passengers already drifting into a quiet slumber. But Alexander Hale, the well-known CEO whose face often appeared in business magazines and financial news, couldn't sleep. He had rushed to catch the last flight home on Christmas Eve, not because he was eager to celebrate, but because his assistant insisted he, at least show up, for the annual family gathering. He didn't want to admit it, not to his board, not to himself, but loneliness had been gnawing at him for years. Success had never filled the empty chair at his table, nor healed the quiet ache in his chest after losing both of his parents too soon. He carried the world on his shoulders, but his own heart remained hollow. As he stared out the window, lost in thoughts he'd pushed away for years, he became aware of a small warmth leaning against the side of his arm. A little boy, maybe 7, maybe 8, with messy brown hair and a red Christmas sweater, was resting his head on Alexander's armrest. The boy seemed exhausted, clutching a worn-out teddy bear with patches stitched lovingly by someone who cared. Alexander shifted slightly, and the boy stirred awake, blinking up with sleepy eyes that looked far older than his age. Before Alexander could move his arm away, the child spoke softly, almost as if he were sharing a secret with the stars outside. Mom said lonely people need friends. Something in those words struck Alexander like a crack across a frozen lake. Because in the innocence of the child's voice, he recognized a truth he had never dared to speak aloud. He looked at the boy again, noticing now how pale he seemed, how tired, how fragile. There was sadness hidden behind the little smile the boy tried to offer. Alexander cleared his throat gently and asked if he was traveling alone. The boy nodded, explaining in a gentle, fragmented way that his mother was waiting for him, but she had been sick, so he was traveling back home to her. Alexander listened quietly, not wanting to interrupt. Every sentence seemed wrapped with longing and bravery, the kind a child shouldn't have to carry. As the flight continued through the snowy night, the boy talked about his mother, how she worked 2 jobs, how she still made time to read him bedtime stories, how she believed that Christmas wasn't about gifts but about finding light in dark places. He spoke with such pure love that Alexander felt himself drawn into a warmth he hadn't felt since he was a child. The boy hugged his teddy bear closer and said his mom always told him that the loneliest people were the ones who needed friends the most, and that being kind to someone could be the best Christmas gift ever. Those words wrapped around Alexander's heart like a soft, invisible blanket. He hadn't realized how desperately he needed someone to remind him what kindness sounded like, what hope felt like, what love looked like when it wasn't tied to expectations or business deals. The boy didn't care about who he was, CEO, billionaire, powerful leader, none of it mattered. To the boy, he was just a lonely man on a plane during Christmas. As the hours passed, turbulence shook the plane, causing a brief moment of fear. The boy grabbed Alexander's hand tightly, and without thinking, Alexander held him just as tightly, whispering that everything would be okay. In that simple moment, Alexander realized how long it had been since he had comforted or protected someone. The instinct felt foreign yet strangely natural, awakening a part of him that had been sleeping for years. When the plane finally landed in the early hours of Christmas morning, the airport was nearly empty. Alexander walked with the boy to the arrival gate, planning to wait with him until his mom came. But as they approached the seating area, the boy's face fell. No one was there. The boy tried to smile through trembling lips, insisting maybe she was running late. Alexander felt a rising sense of concern. Minutes stretched into almost an hour, and the worry in the boy's eyes grew heavier. Alexander gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, promising he wouldn't leave him until they found his mother. Finally, a woman in a faded coat came hurrying through the crowd, her breath unstable, her eyes welling with tears the moment she saw her son. She hugged him so tightly Alexander thought she might break. When she looked up and saw Alexander standing there, she froze in surprise, unable to understand why a stranger, much less a man like him, was protecting her son. She apologized repeatedly for being late, explaining that she had been discharged from the hospital moments before and had rushed as fast as she could. Alexander didn't know why, but hearing her fragile voice made something inside him break open. She was struggling alone, fighting battles no one saw. She thanked him with such sincerity that he had to look away to blink the emotion back. Before they left, the boy turned to him, eyes shining with warmth, and said softly, "Mom says kindness is the only thing that makes lonely people less lonely. I think you needed a friend today." Those words stayed with Alexander long after he watched them walk away into the snowy morning. He stood there, feeling the weight of the boy's sincerity settle deep inside him. He realized then that loneliness wasn't something you defeated with wealth or success. It was something you healed through connection, compassion, and courage. That small boy, with all his innocence and wisdom, had done what no board meeting or achievement ever could. He made Alexander feel human again. In the days that followed, Alexander found himself thinking constantly about that Christmas Eve. On impulse, he reached out to his estranged relatives, mended old wounds, apologized for years of distance he had created. He began supporting families who traveled alone, funding hospital programs for single parents, creating scholarships for children who reminded him of that boy with the patched teddy bear. Slowly, something inside him changed. The cold loneliness that had followed him for years began to thaw. He became kinder, softer, more aware of the world beyond his office walls. And yet, through it all, he never forgot the single line that had changed everything, spoken by a child who didn't even know the weight of his own wisdom. Mom said lonely people need friends. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs warmth today, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Your engagement truly helps us continue creating meaningful content. Before the ending, please take a moment and comment below. Have you ever met someone at the right moment who changed your life, even a little?